What if I told you this wasn't just messy ex drama, but a chilling story of harassment, court confrontations, and shocking double standards that reality TV tried to downplay? Today, we're breaking down the truth they don't want you to see. Martell Holt may have assumed the internet would rally to his defense, but reality proved him wrong. When Tasha K shared that clip of Melody Sheree going live to speak about the harassment she's endured, it didn't just stir conversation, it set the entire room on fire. This was no ordinary spat between exes. Melody wasn't online weeping over heartbreak or TikTok drama. She was addressing real harassment and safety concerns. That distinction hit differently, especially for a woman trying to rebuild her life, raise children, and grow her own business. The livestream shocked many, but what truly magnified its impact was the ripple effect once Tasha K reposted it. Supporters poured in, declaring, "We hear you, sis." At the same time, a darker crowd emerged, people quick to dismiss her, labeling her bitter, or accusing her of exploiting pain just to sell merchandise. Imagine speaking out while facing threats to your life, only to be met with skepticism from strangers. Melody wasn't standing alone in that moment. Her makeup artist, Jay Taylor, broke his silence to back her up, a rare move in a culture where many remain quiet out of fear of ridicule and gaslighting. Too often, women hesitate to share their truth because critics twist the story to protect the aggressor. And in this case, Martell Holt was clearly the aggressor. His reaction followed a predictable pattern: deflect, minimize, and mock. He brushed off the situation, messaging Tasha K with claims that Melody was exaggerating just to push sales. He even downplayed his legal trouble, pointing out that he only paid a $300 fine and avoided jail time, as though a small penalty somehow erases wrongdoing. To add insult, he mocked Melody's court attire, while showing up in his own fitted suit, embodying pure hypocrisy. Then came another layer of controversy: Ariane Curry, often referred to online as Coleslaw. Her courtroom appearance became a topic of its own. While Melody arrived polished and professional, Ariane walked in dressed more like she was headed to a party. Yet Melody bore the brunt of criticism, while Ariane's questionable choices went largely unchecked. That double standard struck a nerve with fans. How is Melody too dramatic for taking the situation seriously, while Ariane's antics barely draw comment? Tensions reached a boiling point during the infamous elevator encounter. Martell, Melody, Ariane, and security all squeezed into the same confined space, the air so heavy it felt combustible. Even then, Ariane allegedly mocked Melody, claiming she was still hung up on Martell, ignoring the reality that Melody has long since moved on, focusing on her children and her peace. Ironically, it's Martell who keeps showing up uninvited, inserting himself into Melody's life and fanning the flames. Yet somehow, the narrative often paints her as the obsessed one. The evidence, however, tells a very different story. Who's really clinging to the drama? The woman trying to move forward, or the man who won't stop interfering? As fans pieced the situation together, another name started surfacing: Carlos King. More than just a background figure, he's the creator and producer of Love and Marriage, Huntsville itself. That raised a new question. How much of this ongoing storm is raw reality, and how much is being shaped for the screen? The responsibility didn't rest on Martell alone. As fans began piecing together past events, it became clear that Melody had been calling for help long before things spiraled. Old text exchanges surfaced, showing she reached out to production when she felt unsafe, asking someone to come to her home. Yet no one came. That silence wasn't just neglect, it was negligence. When a network places people in volatile situations for entertainment, the bare minimum should be ensuring their safety. Melody wasn't spinning tales for sympathy. She had genuine fears, and still the cameras kept rolling. That left fans asking an unsettling question. If the priority is ratings, then who is truly protecting these women when danger is real? Then there's the Scotts, Letitia and Marceau, who have spent years on the sidelines tossing subtle digs while pretending to remain neutral. At times, they brush off Martell's behavior as trivial, and at others, they poke fun at Melody's struggles. What they may see as harmless banter only weakens her support system. Fans haven't forgotten those moments when Melody expressed discomfort and tried to set boundaries, only to be told she needed tougher skin. And Wanda is unpredictable. One day she's backing Melody, and the next she's clowning her on Facebook Live. With allies that inconsistent, it often feels like Melody is fighting this battle alone. Neutrality may sound wise in theory, But when safety is on the line, it becomes little more than silence disguised as sophistication. Meanwhile, Martell continues his reckless cycle, showing up where he doesn't belong, taunting, texting, posting, and then flipping the narrative when confronted. Every time Melody pushes back or sets boundaries, she's painted as the aggressor. That's manipulation in its purest form. Sadly, some people still buy into it, repeating the tired lines that she needs to move on or that she's chasing attention. The irony? Melody has moved on. She's running businesses, raising her kids, and managing her brand with grace. If anything, her story is a masterclass in how to walk away from unhealthy relationships with dignity intact. Martell, on the other hand, could use the same energy he spends stalking her to rebuild his own life. Instead, he weaponizes social media, mocks her in court, and feeds off drama like it's second nature. This isn't just reality TV, it's real life. And when someone keeps dragging their ex into the spotlight, texting bloggers, and twisting the narrative, the truth becomes harder to ignore. By the time Tasha K reposted Melody's live, the situation had exploded. It wasn't about gossip anymore. It was about exposing long-standing patterns that had gone unchecked for far too long. Martell thought he could shift the narrative by tossing out a few videos, his usual play. Drop a clip here, send a message there, and hope people turn their questions toward Melody instead of him. But this time, the tactic fell flat. No matter how many so-called receipts he tries to circulate, the constant thread is his presence. He follows Melody, not the other way around. He shows up, stirs the pot, then gaslights her reaction. That elevator run-in wasn't some random coincidence. It was years of unresolved tension finally boiling over. His slick remarks in that moment didn't make him look clever. They only underscored just how deep his obsession runs. Melody wasn't in that space to entertain Martell, nor to engage with Ariane. She was a woman who had already left the relationship in every way that mattered. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And yet, both Martell and Ariane kept circling her like moths to a flame. Fans couldn't ignore it. Comment after comment asked the same thing. Why is Melody always the one being dragged when she's not even engaging? Why does Ariane keep mocking her? Why does Martell keep showing up uninvited? Melody has removed herself from the chaos, yet others insist on pulling her back in. Martell even tried to downplay his actions to Tasha K, bragging that all he faced was a fine instead of jail time. But that wasn't the flex he thought it was. It only highlighted how the emotional damage inflicted often far outweighs the legal consequences. What cut deepest wasn't Martell's antics, but the way society, and especially other women, responded when Melody spoke her truth. Instead of solidarity, she was met with criticism, judgment, and even ridicule from those who should have understood her struggle the most. Women who know the pain of being silenced, gaslighted, and dismissed still chose to pile on. That betrayal was perhaps the heaviest blow. And yet, through all of it, Melody remained grounded. She refused to play the game the way Martell and others seemed determined to play it. She could have clapped back at every insult hurled her way, dragged her critics across social media, or matched Martell's pettiness point for point. The opportunities were endless, because the attacks never seemed to stop. But instead of meeting chaos with chaos, Melody chose restraint. She chose peace. That choice may not have generated the same headlines as drama does, but it demonstrated something far more powerful: the ability to rise above without losing yourself in the process. That restraint wasn't weakness, it was strength disguised as silence. In a culture where quick retaliation and going low often win the loudest applause, Melody's decision to disengage placed her in a different category altogether. It reminded people that dignity doesn't need to be sacrificed to make a point, and that power doesn't always scream. It sometimes whispers. To stand calmly while the circus swirls around you is not passivity. It is discipline. And it was that discipline that gave her an aura Martell couldn't mimic. No matter how many stunts he tried, from courtroom showdowns to elevator standoffs to viral live streams, the saga surrounding Melody and Martell may look, at first glance, like just another chapter in the messy world of celebrity drama. But to dismiss it as mere entertainment is to miss the deeper lessons embedded within it. What's happening here is bigger than a breakup, bigger than clapbacks, and bigger than love and marriage, Huntsville. It is a study in how platforms reward toxicity, how women are punished for demanding respect, and how accountability is too often traded for ratings. This is why fans aren't letting the issue die down. They aren't merely protecting Melody because they like her personality or root for her as a fan favorite. They are holding a mirror to a larger system that has failed her, and by extension fails many women in similar situations. Every producer, every executive, and every decision-maker who stood by while she was repeatedly humiliated, gaslighted, and ridiculed in front of millions is being called to the table. And at the center of that critique is Carlos King, the creator and producer of the show. Once celebrated for his behind-the-scenes genius, his name is now tied to questions of complicity. Did production turn a blind eye to Melody's pleas for help? Did they allow harassment to continue unchecked because conflict translates into higher ratings? Fans want answers, and the silence from the top only intensifies the scrutiny. As the noise surrounding Martell's antics slowly loses its shock value, one truth emerges with clarity: the problem was never Melody. She isn't the one creating chaos. She isn't the one chasing headlines. She isn't the one pulling stunts to stay relevant. She has been trying to move forward, building businesses, raising her children, maintaining her peace. And yet, her attempts to carve out a dignified life have been met with resistance from those who benefit when she is dragged back into turmoil. The deeper issue is how far some people will go to discredit and silence a woman once she begins to demand better treatment. This pattern is not unique to Melody. History is full of examples of women who, the moment they say enough, become targets of ridicule, doubt, and backlash. They are labeled bitter, dramatic, manipulative, or attention-seeking. The narrative shifts from the wrongdoing of the aggressor to the supposed flaws of the woman daring to speak up. Melody's experience echoes that same pattern. She spoke her truth, and instead of being met with understanding, she was met with scrutiny, even from women who should have known better. That betrayal is what makes the situation sting beyond the personal. When women see other women pile on instead of standing in solidarity, it reinforces a toxic cycle where speaking up is punished rather than respected. The result is a culture where silence feels safer than honesty, and where healing in public comes with the heavy tax of being misunderstood. Melody became a target not just for trolls or critics, but for peers and castmates who diminished her pain instead of acknowledging it. That reality is as heartbreaking as it is familiar. Meanwhile, Martell has continued to pour his energy into the wrong pursuits. The irony is glaring. With the time and focus he invests in mocking, gaslighting, and chasing his ex, he could have rebuilt his own reputation, his own businesses, his own peace. But accountability has never been his strong suit. Instead, he clings to tactics that temporarily distract but never resolve. Sending clips, spreading receipts, minimizing his fines, these aren't signs of growth. They are signs of someone desperate to control a story slipping out of his hands. And the story has slipped. The more Martell attempts to twist the narrative, the clearer it becomes who is actually holding on to the past. It isn't Melody. She's too busy living in the present, focused on her children, her brand, and her healing. It's Martell who keeps reappearing in spaces he shouldn't, reigniting tension that should have been laid to rest years ago. That's why fans increasingly see him not as a co-parent struggling to move forward, but as a man obsessed with keeping his ex tethered to him through chaos. At the same time, the network itself cannot remain invisible in this equation. Reality television thrives on conflict, but where is the line between entertainment and exploitation? When Melody allegedly reached out to production for support and no one showed up, it wasn't just a lapse, it was a breach of responsibility. You cannot place people in dangerous, emotionally charged circumstances for public consumption and then wash your hands when those circumstances escalate. Doing so makes the network not a neutral observer, but an enabler. That's why this conversation refuses to fade away. Fans aren't content to scroll past or move on, because the implications stretch far beyond one show, one cast, or one storyline. This is about the treatment of women in the public eye. It's about what happens when the drive for ratings eclipses the obligation to protect those being filmed. And it's about whether audiences will continue to accept entertainment at the expense of accountability. Melody's story resonates because it reflects an uncomfortable truth many people, especially women, know firsthand. Sometimes, the loudest accusations aren't aimed at the wrongdoer, but at the one who dares to leave. Sometimes, the narrative gets flipped so skillfully that the survivor looks like the aggressor. And sometimes, silence and restraint are the only weapons left. But restraint, in Melody's case, was also her victory. Every time she refused to descend into the mess, Every time she chose peace over pettiness, she reclaimed her power. She reminded people that healing isn't about proving yourself to your detractors. It's about refusing to be defined by them. In a world that rewards spectacle, her quiet dignity became the most radical act of all. And that is why this discussion isn't ending anytime soon. Because it's no longer just about Melody versus Martell. It's about what happens when women demand to be treated with respect and are instead met with resistance. It's about how platforms handle or mishandle the responsibility that comes with broadcasting people's lives. And it's about audiences finally deciding that silence, neutrality, and complicity are no longer acceptable. This isn't a story people can scroll past. It is a mirror held up to society, asking us to examine why certain narratives are accepted while others are dismissed, why accountability is often sidestepped, and why silencing women continues to be such a persistent habit. In many ways, Melody may look like just one woman caught in a storm, but her fight represents something much larger. The universal right to move forward without being chained to those who thrive off your pain. What makes this story resonate so deeply is that it transcends reality TV. Women in workplaces, families, and communities experience the same cycle. Their boundaries ignored, their voices questioned, and their pain reframed as overreaction. When they speak up, they are accused of exaggeration. When they stay silent, they are accused of weakness. And when they move on, they are accused of bitterness. The shifting goalposts are part of the trap. Melody's resilience exposes that trap and gives language to what so many endure privately. Fans are unwilling to let this go because they see the bigger picture. They understand that Melody's situation is not isolated. It is a reflection of how power dynamics play out across culture. The production company, the network, and the figures who looked away when she asked for help represent institutions that prioritize profit over protection. Martell may be the visible antagonist, but the enabling environment that allowed him to continue unchecked is equally culpable. And until those in positions of influence take responsibility, the cycle will repeat, not just on screen, but in countless homes and workplaces across the country. This is why the conversation isn't ending anytime soon. The demand for answers isn't simply about holding Martell accountable. It's about challenging a system that thrives on silencing women, rewarding toxicity, and minimizing real harm for the sake of spectacle. Melody's choice to stand firm, to pursue peace instead of retaliation, is more than personal strength. It is a blueprint for survival in a world that too often confuses noise with truth. And that truth, now exposed, cannot be scrolled past.